A painting that once hung in the Mormon founder's study just might hold the secret and key to understanding the bizarre zombie beliefs Chad and Lori Daybell used to justify murder. Sex, money, and power were the motives discussed in Lori and Chad Daybell's trial, known as the Doomsday Couple, who were charged and sentenced so far for 3 murders. And at the time of this recording, Lori will be going on trial for 1 more murder and an attempt as well. And in previous trials and in such a complex case, the prosecution had to simplify things for the courtroom. But outside of that, what about Chad and Lori Vallow Daybell's secrets hidden beneath the surface? Their secret gatherings, their rituals, affairs, texts, symbols that only they and their secret society understood. Lori and Chad's apocalyptic beliefs led them to label their victims the bizarre term zombies. But what if this chilling term has roots deeper than we imagined? Where did that term come from and why? But artwork in Joseph Smith's study, who is the Mormon founder, might hold the key to this dark mystery. I'm Linda with It's a Crime, so now let's get into it. Before we dive into the connection, let's just revisit for a moment the horrific acts Lori and Chad Daybell committed, acts they justified through their twisted zombie ideology. In 2019, Lori and Chad Daybell's apocalyptic beliefs took a horrifying turn, viewing these victims as zombies whose souls and bodies have been overtaken by demons. They justified the murders of Lori's children, Tylee and JJ, Lori's 4th husband, Charles, and Chad's wife, Tammy. And their ideology, rooted in extreme interpretations of Mormon teachings, allowed them to carry out these atrocities while keeping the ultimate secret, the burial locations of Lori's children hidden right in Chad's backyard, while they pursued their covert mission, one that they thought no one would take notice. And an attempt was made on Lori's nephew-in-law, I should say, at the time, Brandon Boudreau, who narrowly escaped death when a bullet missed him by inches. However, there are still questions and suspicions surrounding Lori's 3rd husband, Joseph Ryan, who died in 2018, and even her brother, Alex Cox, who did much of the dirty work. Alex died after all of the other victims and just a day after Tammy Daybell's body was unexpectedly exhumed. Their actions reflect extreme beliefs extending beyond mainstream Mormonism. They believed that they were destined to lead the 144,000 followers to the second coming of Christ, with an apocalypse predicted for July of 2020, which ultimately and obviously did not occur. And as Lori and Chad's beliefs spiraled into extremism, they began to see their victims as zombies, much like the figures in the painting that fascinated Mormon founder Joseph Smith. But what if this wasn't just a metaphor, and what if this was the ultimate justification for their crimes? But you gotta wonder, why would a painting from the 19th century influence such modern day horrors? And how did Chad Daybell, a self-proclaimed prophet, use this imagery to rationalize murder? Lori Daybell often used Joseph Smith's Book of Mormon as a literal manual for her actions. The Book of Mormon is a religious text that members of the Latter-day Saint movement considered sacred, and Lori frequently referenced it to justify her decisions, including her desire to kill her 3rd husband, Joseph Ryan, as captured in an audio recording.
I was going to murder him. I was going to kill him, like the scriptures say, like Nephi killed him, just to stop the pain and to stop him coming after me and to stop him coming after my children. And I just felt I couldn't take it anymore. And I would go through the scriptures and find all the things, like, if he comes against you once, if he comes against you twice, if he comes against you 3 times, then you can kill him. It says it in the scriptures. And I'm like, there it is. There's my answer.
Chad and Lori began holding these secret meetings with their followers in anticipation of these end of times. And Lori even tried recruiting her friend April Raymond to abandon her children and join their secret group, but April declined. And there's a lot of speculation and curiosity about these secret societies within Mormonism. They're like these exclusive clubs with their own beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, meetings, and teachings that aren't widely known outside the group. And they wanted it kept that way. And we heard this way back in 2018 when Lori met Chad Daybell, and Lori's friend Melanie Gibb was in tow, and she talked about these secret meetings, these secret combinations as called, and their conversations. And that's when the affair between Lori and Chad began, both cheating on their spouses. Their secrecy extended into communication. They used burner phones, coded texts, and emails. The Daybells' coded language discussed at trial was an attempt to conceal their plot. They finally acknowledged that the Daybells did things in code, something I have been talking about for the last 4+ years. And the group even performed castings to cast out evil spirits from their victims, whom they had labeled zombies. Now, Chad in trial wasn't too happy about how the prosecution talked about these castings and zombies, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. But what's important is they viewed these zombies as individuals whose bodies had been taken over, allowing them to justify these heinous crimes. And the husband of Lori's niece, Ian Pulowski, described that people became zombies if their human bodies, quote, have had their original spirits forced from them and have been possessed by either a demon, a disembodied spirit, or a worm/slug. And not only did Chad and Lori refer to them as zombies, but they also took it a step further and assigned names to them, which is a topic for another theory video at another time, as I do on occasion do theory videos just like this. I'll have the playlist below or at the end of this video. And also comment below if you'd like to know more on these assigned names. It's a bit of a wild theory, but yet something that is potentially compelling and thought-provoking, and, well, I wouldn't even put it past this bunch. But maybe they used the term to distance them so they could justify things, but the term zombie is also often correlated with the end of times and the apocalypse. And most importantly, what do you do with zombies? You terminate them. And since the victims are no longer the people they once knew, according to them, then it's okay in their mind to do what they did. And in Lori's trial, zombies were brought to light, and their mutual friend Melanie Gibb testified to it. But Chad was known to be a leader in his religion, but also he looked up to and learned from his ultimate leader, Joseph Smith. He also considered himself a modern-day prophet, much like Joseph Smith. And Joseph Smith claimed to have received divine revelations, which led to the founding of the LDS Church in 1830. And he's revered by Mormons as a prophet, but Chad took his teachings and warped them to fit his apocalyptic narrative. And Chad and Lori believed that they were meant to fulfill 7 sacred missions, including translating ancient records, preparing white camps, as they called them, and more, believing that they were leading the chosen 144,000 to salvation. And Joseph claimed to have been directed by an angel named Moroni to a set of golden plates buried in a hill near his home. And these plates, which Joseph Smith said were written in an ancient language called Reformed Egyptian, contain these religious history of ancient American civilizations. And this will be an important piece of information later on in this video, so please take note. Now, Chad also wrote apocalyptic books and was a writer, although I use that term very, very, very loosely. And Joseph Smith had a 4-part title of prophet, seer, revelator, and translator. And Chad followed Joseph's beliefs and took it a step further, more than a step. But years ago when he was younger, he claimed he had a near-death experience and could see beyond the veil and had these visions. Lori claimed that as well, even though her sister said that that's the first she heard of it. So Chad saw himself as this prophet, a seer, revelator, and translator, just like Joseph Smith. Now, before we dive deeper into this painting and into the details of it, I want to take a quick minute to talk about something a little bit more uplifting: scent. And as strange as it may seem, scent has an incredible way of influencing how we feel, just like how Chad and Lori's warped beliefs influenced their followers. But thankfully and positively, the impact of scent doesn't have to be negative. In fact, it can transform your whole day, and that's where Scentbird comes in. Scentbird is a monthly subscription that allows you to explore a world of fragrances without committing to a full bottle. You get to try different scents from top brands each month and discover what works best for you. I've been using it to switch things up depending on my mood, whether I need something light and fresh for the day or something more mysterious for a night out. You get to try the first fragrance from Scentbird for only $8, and your next month will be only $16.95 a month. And with the holidays coming, it could be a great gift for others or for yourself. And Scentbird delivers an 8 ml bottle, which is about 130 sprays, more than enough to last. I was sent 4 bottles, but my personal favorites have been Kenzie Zest for Life during the day. It's light and fruity with notes of mango, pineapple, grapefruit, lemon, and tangerine. And for a bit of intrigue at night, I've been wearing Rose Vanille by Mancera, and the more I've been wearing it, the more I am loving it. It has lemon, Turkish delight with rose, cedarwood, vanilla, and white musk. But there are so many options you can choose from on the site. When I was scrolling on the Scentbird's website, I found one that I need to wear if I go to Lori Daybell's trial in 2025, and that's this one by Confessions of a Rebel. How fun is that? What other ones do you think I would love? And if you're interested in trying Scentbird, use my code It'sACrime55 or the link below to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird. That's It'sACrime55. And it's a great way to change up your vibe without a big commitment, and is so convenient to just pop it in your purse and go. Now, speaking of changing things up, let's get back into how the Daybells use symbolism and secret practices to twist religious teachings into something far darker and sinister. And let's get into the painting. But Joseph Smith made an interesting and noteworthy journal entry back in 1844 about a painting in his reading room that captivated him so much he stared at it for 3 days. On June 15th of 1844, his journal entry read, quote, "The steamboat Maid of Iowa come down the river about 2 or 3 o'clock while I was examining Benjamin West's painting of Death on the Pale Horse, which has been exhibited in my reading room for 3 days. This painting, Death on a Pale Horse, by Benjamin West, resonated deeply with Smith's beliefs about future events, especially the apocalypse, and it depicts a scene from the book of Revelation in the Bible, specifically the 4th horseman, death. And have you ever heard of the 4 horsemen? This refers to the 4th. And the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse represents significant forces that will play a role in the events leading up to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And the first horseman, riding a white horse, symbolizes conquest or the spreading of the gospel, often interpreted as Christ's influence expanding throughout the world. And the second, on a red horse, represents war and bloodshed. And the third, riding a black horse, is associated with famine and scarcity, while the 4th, on a pale horse, signifies death and destruction. These symbolic riders portray trials that humanity will face, emphasizing the importance of faith and preparedness as part of God's plan. And these events also signal the eventual return of Christ and his fulfillment of his purposes. So the book of Revelation is also known as the Apocalypse, which is the Greek word for revelation, and it basically means revealing or uncovering things that were hidden. And you can find this in the Bible dictionary under Revelation of John. And according to the Church of Jesus Christ website, it says, this book is an unveiling of the Lord Jesus Christ and a revelation of his authority, power, and preeminent role in the Father's plan of salvation. The book also reveals important information about the events leading up to the second coming and the millennium. Now, remember, who believed they were going to lead others to the second coming of Christ? Lori and Chad Daybell. And revelation to them is important. And for the apocalypse, they thought killing people would go unnoticed because people would be so focused on the destruction around them. And this importance to them was also Joseph Smith. And this painting would also be important. So let's take a look at the Bible verse that inspired this painting around the 4th horseman, death and destruction, from Revelation 6:8. It says, "And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." Now, if we do a deep dive into the painting, some more intriguing details start to emerge. In this passage, Death rides a pale horse, accompanied by Hades. Benjamin West's painting captures this haunting moment, and Death, portrayed as a skeletal figure draped in a flowing cloak, rides a pale horse, which symbolizes death and decay. And the figure of death carries a scythe, representing the end of life, while chaos and destruction unfold in the background, and flames rise from burning buildings and terrified figures flee. Now, there was a 114-page analysis of this painting written by a missionary who is also a shoemaker, where he meticulously breaks down each figure. And he says, an image of the devouring mortality is seen in the sudden death of a young mother and her infant son. You can see that in the forefront of this painting. And it says she is supported by her husband, who at the same time extends his arm as it were to stop the galloping of the pale horse. Her daughter, a beautiful child in a pathetic attitude, endeavors to, and it's hard to read that part, but it says everything shows this to be a family of rank. But if we also take a look at right in front of the horse of this little family, what's interesting to me even shows that there is the mother that's dead, which is much like Tammy Daybell. And although the children isn't Tammy's children, there's a little boy on the lap that is also deceased. And this young girl with blonde, flowy locks who's reaching out. And that, to me, and you know, it's not directly correlated, but it is starting to get haunting, because even the man who's supposed to be the husband, who could be like Charles Vallow, who's trying to stop the horse, be it Lori or Chad. And I'll tell you why that's even more important in a minute. Here's where it gets more fascinating. There is a particular figure in the painting that stands out, and its skin is pale, a sickly color, like it has no blood, and is naked and no clothes, and it seems dead, lifeless, like it has already crossed over into the realm of the undead. This figure, with its pallid complexion and lifeless demeanor, eerily resembles the modern depiction of a zombie. And could this be where Chad and Lori got this term zombie to describe their victims and going after this family? And they attach the importance to this. While this figure in the painting isn't explicitly a zombie, but the deathly, pallor, skeletal features and haunting presence strongly evoke the undead, something Chad Daybell might have latched onto in his twisted worldview. And this eerie figure, who's devoid of life and blood, mirrors how Chad and Lori perceived their victims as zombies, soulless, being whose bodies had been taken over by dark forces. And the pale, almost bloodless quality of the figure hints at something unnatural, much like their belief that zombies needed to be eradicated to stop the forces of evil. And it's preying upon the victims. Now, Chad Daybell, who fancied himself a modern-day prophet, resonated with these apocalyptic visions, and his refusal during the trial to discuss the idea of zombies only strengthens the theory that this painting, hidden away in Joseph Smith's reading room for 3 days, may have left a mark on Mormon apocalyptic thinking and ultimately on Chad and Lori themselves. And there's more to this that meets the eye of this painting in Joseph Smith. But first, there's one other thing that leads back to Joseph Smith, and it's called the White Horse Prophecy. Joseph Smith and the White Horse Prophecy is one of the more controversial aspects of Mormon religion. Apparently, Joseph Smith predicted that the United States Constitution would one day hang by a thread, and that it would be saved by the efforts of the Latter-day Saints. And the prophecy compares the saints to the white horse of the apocalypse from the book of Revelation, positioning them as saviors during a time of great turmoil in the country. Although this prophecy has been dismissed as non-doctrinal, or however you word that, by modern church authorities, it retains a powerful hold on Mormon folklore and has been referenced in political context, including by Mormon leaders like Brigham Young and Orson Hyde. And the prophecy suggests that in times of national crisis, the constitutional survival would depend on the righteous efforts of the saints, symbolized by the white horse. And this prophecy echoes Joseph Smith's deep concern for the United States, a nation he saw as divinely inspired by fraught with potential destruction. It also ties into Smith's political ambitions as he ran for the presidency in 1844, only to be assassinated later that year, leaving his vision unfulfilled. So in 1830, Joseph publishes this Book of Mormon and formally organizes the Church of Christ, later known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in 1843, he delivers this White Horse Prophecy. And in 1844, in June, he is talking about this painting, and he is also running for presidency, but then he was assassinated. But let's go back to Joseph's journal entry. He talked about the steamboat coming around 2 or 3 o'clock. But this steamboat wasn't any old steamboat. The Maid of Iowa was first launched in 1842 and was used as a passenger ship on the Mississippi River and had a capacity of 200 passengers. And the boat was known for transporting British Mormon converts to settle in Illinois. And Joseph Smith purchased shares of this boat in 1843 for use by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it would also serve as pleasure cruises, a church meeting place, and also for hauling workers and supplies to work on the temple. And on one of the voyages, a large steamboat tried to run the Maid of Iowa off the river, but the captain stopped it by threatening to shoot the captain of the large steamboat. So when Joseph was writing in his journal entry, it wasn't just any old steamboat, it was one he had a vested interest in. And symbolism is important to Joseph as it was the Daybells, which brings me to the time, 2 or 3 o'clock. And that's something I have been talking about for the last 4+ years. I believe that Tammy Daybell, J.J. Vallow, and Tylee Ryan were killed in the middle of the night. I've talked about it being around this 3 o'clock, this witching hour, and I believe that's when they were murdered. But if we take that a step further, I'll show you why. Tylee was killed first, and her timeline around that lied in the actions of her uncle Alex Cox, who conspired with Lori and Chad to kill her. And September 8th was the last day Tylee was seen alive. That day, she went to Yellowstone National Park with her younger brother JJ and her mom Lori and her uncle Alex. Chad is busy that day looking up the wind direction in the hours leading up to her murder. On September 9th is when Tylee was buried on Chad's property. But Alex, for the first time, which is notable, was the only time in September that Alex is at Lori's house from midnight to 6 a.m. on September 9th. And his phone pings show at 2:42 a.m. his phone pings at Lori's apartment. And something happened there because at 3:37 a.m. he leaves Lori's apartment. And there's an hour gap after that in pings, but it next shows at 4:37 he's back at his own apartment. And it hasn't been disclosed where he was during that hour. By 8:59 he leaves his apartment, and 9:21 a.m. he's at Chad's property, and Tammy would be at work at this time, so they have some time to do what they need to do. Next is J.J. Vallow. His last proof of life was September 22nd, and there was a picture taken of J.J. sitting on a couch in his red pajamas, which he would be later found in the same attire. And it was taken 10:46 a.m. that morning. But at nighttime, he was seen coming back into Lori's townhome with Alex, who was carrying him on his shoulder. And by the morning, JJ was gone from home. Now, JJ was then buried on Chad Daybell's property, again around that 9:55 a.m. near the pond, where J.J. Vallow's remains were discovered 9 months later. And as well Tylee. And Alex was there till 10 a.m. and then he left. I have more to talk about in JJ in just a minute. But Tammy is murdered on October 19th, and the coroner reports that her estimated time of death was around 2 a.m. As for Charles Vallow and the attempt made on Brandon Boudreau's life, they were both in the morning, but I think that was more about opportunity than timing. And now let's go one step further, and this is where it gets really interesting to me. Let me know what you think. Because Alex Cox, he dies a day after Tammy is exhumed from the grave after there was suspicion. And the 911 call placed that day on December 12th was placed at 3:20 in the afternoon after Alex is found unresponsive. So I'm guessing around that 3 o'clock mark is when he died. And earlier, Chad Daybell gave a little phone call and did a priesthood blessing with Alex over the phone. Now, let's go back again one more time to this journal entry, the date of June 15th or 06:15, because before I even knew about this date, I had found a pattern long ago to the birth dates and death dates of the women victims and the dates and the death dates of the men. And I had wondered what the significance of it was. And on June 15th, I did find that Joseph Smith and his wife's first son, Alvin, died a short time after birth. But I looked more into it, and Tammy was born on the 4th, but died on the 19th, a difference of 15. Tylee was born the 24th, died on the 9th, difference of 15. Charles Vallow, born on the 17th, died on the 11th, difference of 6. Alex Cox even had the difference of 6. He was born the 18th and died on the 12th. Weird, right? What about the attempt on Brandon? He was born on the 26th of June, and his attempt was on the 2nd of October, which on a calendar, if you moved forward since June has 30 days, it would be, the 2nd would be 6 days. But you want to know what's weird about all the men? It adds each of them to 666, the mark of the beast. What about JJ? Well, I believe he's a wild card, but still it's symbolic and significant. He died on the 23rd of September, but was born on the 25th, which is only a difference of 2. But the 23rd is when Chad Daybell would talk to his dead grandmother, Lucille, and get instructions on what to do. Not only that, but it's very notable, as the days leading up on September 21st and 22nd, Joseph Smith receives a vision of the angel named Moroni, who talks about a book written on golden plates and in a nearby hillside near where Joseph lives. And these plates would be translated by Joseph and become the Book of Mormon. So Joseph receives this vision on the 21st. On the 22nd, he's guided by this vision and finds the book in a box in a place that would be called Hill Cumorah. It would be later called that. And it was 3 miles from his farm. And he was instructed by Moroni to not take the gold plates yet, but return on September 22nd for the next 4 years, and then be instructed by God on the mission that is in store for him. Now, I have to point this out. JJ was buried on a hill near a tree in Chad Daybell's farm. And he was buried with 3 large flat rocks. Were they to symbolize the plates? Chad wanted to lead. He wanted to translate like Joseph and be a prophet and a seer. And he used that as inspiration and follow the leader. He also gave blessings he didn't have the authority to do. Was the painting the inspiration behind the zombies, the time of deaths, and the dates? Let me know what you think below. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use coupon code IT'SACRIME55.